We've got clinchers from week 17, a really good one finishing Sunday night. Still one more to go on Monday Night Football as well. We've got number one picks that are being blown left and right every week in the NFL, and so much more from week 17 coming at you right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there, and welcome to the new listeners. We're taking you through the entire NFL every single day here through the regular season into the postseason, and of course the offseason. Tons of draft talk as well to come here on Peacock and Williamson. So welcome. Make sure you subscribe. Helps us out tremendously. Hit that subscribe button right now on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Big return right now on FanDuel. New customers can place just a $5 bet, and if you win, you get $250 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com to get started. I think we should start with the Sunday Nighter. I don't know if it's because it's just in my mind, Matt, but it was a really fun one. I really enjoyed being able to concentrate on a full game now for Michael Penix, getting his second NFL start. Had a nice little, it was a borderline preseason game against the New York Giants last week. More on the Giants in a second, by the way, which is an interesting one with the Colts, so just out of nowhere. But in the end, he was able to take his team down the field. Penix did miss a lot of throws in this game, but made a big throw at the end of regulation, pushed the game to overtime. But in OT, it was Jayden Daniels, the other rookie quarterback, and his 3 touchdown passes that was able to overtake the Falcons at home. So 30-24 Commanders over the Falcons, 11-5 Commanders now clinching that playoff spot. And the Falcons still some work to do at 8-8 going into week 18 of the NFL season. And it was funny, Matt, because I'm watching the game with my young son. And he decided about halfway through the game that he was going to stop playing with his Legos. And we're putting together a lot of Lego stuff. He's a big Star Wars fan, and we're putting together a Lego X-Wing. And he saw the Falcons, and he thought, you know what? I'm going to root for the Falcons because it's kind of like the Millennium Falcon, which is one of the great ships in Star Wars, right? And so he decides to root for the Falcons. And so he's like, 1 minute left, and they're lining up for this field goal. And the kick is up. And he starts screaming. I've never seen him get this excited over a football game. So he's starting to really get into the sport, which I love. And it's so fun to see, and I'm not trying to push him too hard, but it's always on TV, right? Because it's daddy's work. And
been there, yeah.
And I can imagine if young Leo, who had been a Falcons fan for all of 30 minutes, watches this kick go up, the same thought I had. He nailed it. It's good. They won it. So I can't imagine Falcons fans that were like jumping up off their couch, screaming and yelling, and then watching that field goal fall almost comically short. Because it's like guys don't miss field goals short anymore, Matt. So that kick went up is like, oh man, he nailed it right through the middle of the uprights. And it falls so, it was just like hilariously short for a non-Falcons fan, right? Leo was devastated watching this game. I can't imagine what Falcons fans were doing, thinking that kick was good, and then it falls short, and then they end up losing in OT.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on the kick, but I love that story because my son, who's now 18, kind of went through that too. Would be on the couch while the games are on, and then he started caring, and then he started really caring, and it's awesome. It was a new kicker. Do they just not know his range? Or they just said, I know that's not your range. We're going to throw you out there anyway and hope for the best because that's all we got.
Probably a better chance than hitting a Hail Mary.
Hail Mary, I guess. Yeah.
Right. So you still got to attempt it. But yeah, I didn't realize that his leg was a little bit short because it wasn't that long. It wasn't like a 70-yard field goal attempt or anything. And so, yeah, that guy,
sure he's like, Coach,
range out to 50.
Yeah. Coach, I got this. He just wants to keep a job.
Yeah.
But really fun game. More reassurance that this is an excellent quarterback draft class. And the league looks like it's in pretty good hands in the near future with young quarterbacks. Both had their share of spectacular, but especially Daniels. I thought the Commanders really were bogged down by penalties. A lot of penalties this game against those guys. But other than that, Well, they did a good job against McLaurin too, but I thought Daniels really figured things out late. The Falcons defense had been on the field too long, and he was an unstoppable force, either running or throwing at that point. And then some spectacular stuff at the end too. So really fun game. Bijan, I thought, was unbelievably impressive too. So the Falcons are in good hands. I don't know if they're going to get in or not, but both these teams are trending the right direction, I think, with their young quarterbacks.
Just putting the scouting eye on Michael Penix. Did he pass the test for you? The short arm delivery, I don't know if it's because of he's a lefty and it maybe adds a little bit more to it. And I think in the draft process, you compared him to Phillip Rivers
a little bit. Yeah.
And he does have that. Like, it's a weird short arm delivery. There were some legitimately bad throws he made. It was like, that is way too off for an NFL quarterback. But then there's other times, like the touchdown pass, he zips it in there and it's a perfect throw. So, just something he might have to work through early in his career. And I really did think Chris Collinsworth did a good job of painting the picture of what Jayden Daniels looks like when he's running the football, because it's not rushed. And he talks about like slalom skiing. It's just,
I like that.
Going through it, and he knows he's athletic enough to get where he needs to go. And so it was fun to watch the two rookie quarterbacks go at it.
I think Collinsworth also had the observation about Penix that everything's still a little bit too much on the line. You can put a little air under things, a little more touch. But I mean, hey, it's a second game. We saw him throw with touch at the college level, so I'm sure that's coming.
Let's go to the Saturday games now, which it's funny because we had the crazy blowouts on Christmas. And I mean, it seems like 3 weeks ago that we had the first week 17 games. I know. It's kind of insane with how many games are on the schedule and like traveling. We were talking about this off the air, Matt. It gets a little crazy this time of year for, working through the NFL season. So you had the stinkers of blowouts on the Christmas
Day.
BP,
every Monday I do a Steeler recap show. That's where I'm headed as soon as we hit the record or turn the record button off. And I don't remember any of the details of the game. It was on Christmas Day. A million games have happened between them.
Exactly. I just remember like bad games and then groggy Christmas, the day after Christmas on Thursday. Then you had an awful game that was 6-3 with the Seahawks and the Bears, and we kind of already covered those games. And then you get up Saturday games, and then it's another blowout with the Chargers just thumping the Patriots 40-7. And by the way, let's mix this in with the Sunday Giants win over the Colts. This was just the most opposite football game in results of the entire season. The Colts are, trying to cling to, the final hopes, and they weren't going to get in, but clinging to the final hopes of trying to get a playoff spot against the Giants, who really need the number one pick in the NFL draft. I mean, both coaches should have gone out before the game and agreed that it wasn't going to end up the way it did. And somehow the Giants offense puts up 45 points out of nowhere against the Colts, might be getting a defensive coordinator fired in the process as the Colts lose and fall to 7-9. And then the Giants blow their shot potentially at the number one pick in the draft with, multiple Flacco interceptions. And he wanted to prove that he's not done. And then it's like, well, Flacco's not going to take a team anywhere. And Neighbors goes over 1,000 yards and 100 receptions on the year. So that was good. It's just such a weird game, and everyone just blowing it in every possible way. And now the Patriots, who lost big to the Chargers, have an opportunity to seal up the number one pick in the NFL draft if they lose to the Bills in week 18. Oh yeah. Congratulations, Jim Harbaugh, who turned around another franchise with the Chargers.
Yeah, and I assume you're saying that because now the Patriots have the first overall pick. And
yes,
good for them. They can dangle it if it ends up, they end up losing next week and shore that up. But great for the Chargers. They look very buttoned up. They look like they're ready for a playoff run, destroyed a bad team. And, when you focus on a standalone Patriots team, you just realize they don't have any good players. I mean, they have Gonzalez and May, and both those guys left the game at one point. I mean, man, you guys have nothing. I mean, your line is a bunch of nobodies. But anyway, I think the real story is, yes, they allowed a kickoff return for a touchdown against the Giants, but this Colts defense, I mean, what a choke job. I mean, in a game you had to have, and let's be honest, I mean, Drew Lock's a professional. Malik Neighbors is a stud. Tyrone Tracy and Wan'Dale Robinson are good players. But you can't lose this game, and it's really on the defense. I mean, it felt like the Giants scored every time they touched the ball.
And it's not like, Drew Lock's a professional quarterback, sure.
Right.
He's lost every quarterback competition he's ever had. He has never done this to anybody. And then when your season's on the line, he comes in and does this to you. Like that's how you lose jobs in the NFL.
That's how you lose it. Yeah. And there's such a vanilla defense anyways. That might be time for big changes on that side of the ball minimum.
More on the Week 17 schedule. That was some really big wins for some teams trying to hang on to their playoff dreams, including MVP candidate Joe Burrow and a whole lot more, including what's going to go down in Week 18, potentially in the NFC North. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that maybe you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Definitely happens to folks out there, and you'd be surprised how often it happens. And maybe just subscriptions that you're not paying for twice, but you just forgot about that you flat out don't need. Rocket Money makes it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or maybe just the goals that you're trying to hit each year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in just canceled subscriptions alone, and up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features for each member. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Big win for the Cincinnati Bengals, who defeat the Broncos. It was like the first good game finally of the entire Week 17. 30-24 win for the Bengals over the Broncos. And the Bengals now at 8-8, and the Broncos fall to 9-7 in that overtime battle. So that really kicked off Week 17, to be honest with you, was that afternoon game on Saturday.
Yeah, and they're on a heater. They're on a 4-game winning streak. They will be here in Pittsburgh next week with a chance. They need some help. Unfortunately for the Bengals, Denver has to lose to a backup Chief team. So, but Burrow's been at an MVP level. Chase was good, but he got Surtain so often. They just beat the crap out of Riley Moss and mostly Higgins and a lot of tight ends over the middle of the field. And Denver didn't play bad, but Cincy's just really hot right now, especially on offense.
Man, and the Burrow to Higgins connection on a heater in this one. 11 for 131 with all three of Burrow's touchdown passes going back to him for at the end of the game, just over and over again. And so 412 yards, 3 touchdowns for Burrow. NFL record, isn't it? Like 8 straight games with 250 plus yards and 3 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
And if the Bengals figure this thing out and somehow do the thing, because they're not eliminated yet, that would be I think Burrow gets my vote for MVP.
Burrow, Lamar, Allen. Can we just make it a 3-way tie if they get in? Or otherwise, I just want to split the MVP votes if the Bengals don't get in. They all deserve it more than Lamar did last year. Like they all deserve it more than most season MVPs. Unbelievable. Last nugget, though, it should have cost the Bengals, but they screwed up at the end. They handed it to Chase Brown, who they obviously told not to score. He gets injured on the play, and then Burrow, the next play, just sneaks it in and kicks it right back to Denver, who goes down and scores and sends it to overtime. Like, what are you doing? And now you lost Chase Brown.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
Again, NFL's chaos. And then we saw one with the Arizona Cardinals falling to the Rams on Saturday evening, 13-9, another ugly football game. The 10-6 now Rams defeat the Cardinals. Rams trying to win that NFC West and needed a lot of help to be able to do that before the Week 18 matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, and the Cardinals just kind of they had a hot run earlier this season, but the Cardinals just really fell short and kind of fell flat to the end of the year. And clearly it started to show that they're just under talented on the defensive side of the ball, and the Rams were able to win that one to finish off the Saturday schedule.
Yeah, they lost James Conner early.
Yeah,
we can talk about this maybe tomorrow, but such a weird week to have fantasy Super Bowls, because there's all these standalone games, and then the next team decides they're not playing somebody and blah, blah, blah. But hey, Puka and McBride got his first touchdown. They all went crazy for that. That was cool. And it wasn't the prettiest game in the world, but the Rams needed to win it. They did. And the Cardinals are, in for another day.
And congrats to the Rams, who after that game and had to wait all the way through the Washington win on Sunday night, ended up clinching the division. So they don't need that Week 18 game now against
that's big.
The now eliminated Seattle Seahawks, who are the most recently eliminated. And the Seahawks could win 10 games and not get in the playoffs this year. So that's what it was like in the NFC.
Mm-hmm. And we'll dig into it later in the season or in the week, but the schedule came out. We know which games are now standalones. That was late last night. And we can see who's going to play anyone and who isn't and all that kind of stuff too. But good for the Rams. I'm sure Stafford liked the week off if that's what they're going to do.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, that's helpful for all of them. And like, the way that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua play and are banged up, and some of those rookies too that are probably hitting the rookie wall. It might help them as much as any team in the NFL to get rest and get healthy in Week 18, getting ready for the playoffs. Let's move on to a quick note on a couple blowouts. The Bills did their work. Josh
This
Allen
was pathetic by the Jets, though. I mean, they got 14 late points. I think Tyrod Taylor orchestrated both those drives. I know at least one. But this was a really sad performance by Rodgers and company. That's how I took away. Like, this was like, didn't even try kind of feel.
And then Devontae Adams hurt late in the game, and you start to think, oh, man, this is a disaster for, the end of career for these guys. There's a few teams in the NFL at the end of the season that were just like, what are you guys doing in such a disappointing fashion? The Jets were absolutely one of those, getting blown out. And really, Josh Allen didn't get the opportunity to add too much to his MVP resume because, he only had to throw 27 times for 182 yards, and he still threw 2 touchdown passes and ran one in. So it still looks good in the touchdown category for Josh Allen, but, he didn't have to chuck the ball a whole bunch in this game for the Buffalo Bills. And then you go to another disappointing team down the stretch. And look, they were a bad team all year, so you shouldn't be too surprised about it. But the Tennessee Titans, they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They seem like they gave up. The Cleveland Browns, who lost 20-3 to the Miami Dolphins. The Cleveland Browns seemed like they were a team that had kind of given up most of the season. There was a little bump there. It was like, the Browns going to do something? And then, no. And throwing DTR out there, who's obviously not an answer for them, and restructured. I don't know what you think about the restructuring contract that was announced.
Maybe that's a tomorrow conversation too. Because it sounds, I think Schefter said something like they want to go get Kirk Cousins. Like, do they want the most expensive quarterback room they could possibly buy? I don't quite understand it. I need to unpeel that a little bit tonight, maybe.
Well, how do you fix it? You just got to throw more stuff at the position, right? Because it's not going to get cheaper, but they're just going to, kind of kick the can down the road a little bit. Because it was funny because we'll talk more about the Deshaun Watson contract.
Browns D hung around and Garrett made some plays, but their offense just had nothing. DTR is horrible. They have no running game. Miami got a game they needed to,
And that was without Tua. Tyler Huntley.
Yeah, he was okay. Yeah, he was okay. Much better than the stint that Tua missed before.
It's not like he ran the ball because he led the team in passing and rushing. Huntley did.
Yeah.
The Raiders really trying to screw up their draft position, win another game against the Saints. And when we previewed this game, it was like the Saints are the worst team in the league right now because of how banged up they are on top of being a little bit under-talented. And the Raiders going out there looking like they're having some fun, like laying it on a team. When's the last time you saw the Raiders go out and beat the heck out of somebody?
Yeah, and good for them. They're playing hard. O'Connell has a lot to prove. And the Saints are horrendous. I really thought the Saints and Giants coming in this week were clearly the worst teams in the league. Maybe the Giants are better than I thought. But how about Brock Bowers? He beats the Ditka record, which is amazing. That was still a record. What an amazing rookie year by Mike Ditka. And he beats Puka's record for most catches by a rookie, no matter what position. So that's kind of the story of this one is monumental day for Brock Bowers. Unbelievable rookie year.
Yeah, and doing it in 16 games. And by the way, who else went to 2,000 yards in 16 games?
Yeah, I like that too.
Saquon Barkley. And I love and we're going to preview obviously next week's games, but Eagles Giants next week.
I think so. Yeah.
You think Saquon Barkley wants to set the record against his old team? He might run for 300 yards next week, even though they need to rest him. So he better do it all in the first half.
He might. They're locked in at the 2 spot, so they have nothing to play for. But that would be cool. Cowboys were pretty terrible in this game too. We were just talking about how they've been fighting, and McCarthy's job looks secure, blah blah blah, and now they get blown out 41-7 by Kenny Pickett, and then McKee led Eagles team. McKee might be better than Pickett, by the way. I'm not even picking on him just because he's a former Steeler, but he's not bad. Devontae Smith, they kind of did what they wanted after a while.
Mm-hmm.
Cowboys' offense is troubling.
By the way, 31 carries, 187 yards for Saquon Barkley in that game.
Yeah.
41-7, and Trey Lance couldn't even get in the game for the Cowboys?
I think it speaks volumes.
I think it does.
Kind of telling you what they think, yeah.
Baker Mayfield, they needed it, and
he was on
they
fire
got it.
Too, yeah.
A huge game, going crazy with 5 touchdown passes for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and thumped the division rival Carolina Panthers 48-14. And now with the loss with the Falcons, the Bucs in the driver's seat to go win this thing out and win this out.
Yeah, I mean, could probably say this for the majority of the year, but Mayfield was one of the most impressive quarterbacks on the slate yesterday, and he's had a really, really good year. I think their offensive coordinator might get some attention for head coaching gigs. Bucky Irving's been a star. They've got a great offensive line. And speaking of streaks and things to go for next week, Mike Evans could keep that 1,000-yard streak alive despite missing a big chunk in the middle of the season. Good vibes in Tampa.
Yeah, and I had a feeling. That's why I picked the Bucs big in this one, because I just had a feeling they were going to bounce back, because they kind of shown that resilience all year. In against a bad team, Baker Mayfield was going to do his thing, and so we'll see if they can make some noise in the playoffs. They still got some work to do here in Week 18, so it's going to be fun previewing what games are really important coming up here in Week 18. I think there's going to be a lot of them, both for draft position on one side of things, and obviously some playoff seeding on the other side of things in Week 18. No game is going
as weird as it gets, though. I mean, just these standalone games, and I mean, it's just wore me down a little bit.
With Christmas on a Wednesday is probably the worst day now that I think about it and go through it. It just makes things really, really screwy, especially if you're somebody who covers the league. But
yeah, and I noticed my wife got like less and less nice to me every time I'm glued to the TV, and every day was a little harsher than the next. Like, I'm sorry, I got to watch this game.
Yeah, and for the podcast watchers and listeners, I apologize. I got a different background behind me every single day. We go different homes and different family members, and traveling around the state of California trying to figure out how to work out a bunch of podcasts and still cover the league.
Yeah.
But, hey, we still get to watch football for a living, Matt. So
I know. But this week was a bit of a challenge.
But the best game of the week is going to be Vikings Lions next week. It's going to be so much fun. And one of the best games this week was Vikings holding on to defeat the Green Bay Packers 27-25. So as long as, and I'm presuming the Lions are going to do what they need to do.
Are they going to play anyone tonight or not? Like, they have nothing to play for whatsoever. And it's a Monday night game, short week, but that's not a Campbell thing to do.
Campbell's already talked about it. Like, hearing Campbell talk about the game and knowing that the Lions are playing against the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year. I mean, Lions by 1 million in this game. They're going to play everybody as long as they have to, in the
fourth quarter,
it gets out of hand.
Goff might have a baseball cap on or whatever.
Right. But look, the NFL's chaos. So we'll see if the 49ers can throw a wrench into things. And they're so banged up. They might have, maybe 2/5 of their starting offensive line in there for Brock Purdy, which doesn't bode well for this on paper for the 49ers on Monday Night Football, which would set up a potential great game next week. It's going to be the primetime game now with the Lions and the Vikings, because the Vikings defeated the Packers 14-2, 14-2 Vikings now, and the 11-5 Packers. I thought it was interesting. Xavier McKinley was asked after the game a question by a reporter, and sometimes players will, kind of slough off a question like this. But the question was, do you guys have more to prove against the best teams in the NFL and prove you can beat them? And he said, yes, we absolutely do.
Yeah. I think that's a safe answer. I mean, they're really good, but are they good enough? And I think it's pretty impressive win by the Vikes, to be honest with you. I thought Darnold was awesome. They did a good job taking Jefferson away early, but then he starts popping off, and they're clearly comfortable just taking Hawkinson and Addison all day long if teams sell out against Jefferson. I don't know what the answer is. Aaron Jones got banged up. So I'm in a fantasy Super Bowl. I lost by 1 point, 1.0. And Aaron Jones didn't play like any of the second half of the year. Devontae Chan. Not that I'm grumpy about it or anything, but hey, that's fantasy. Vikings are legit. I mean, I don't know what's too high to put them in a power rank right now. Like if someone said 1, I'd be like, that's not where I'd put them, but I see where you're coming from.
And this is huge with the Lions. And so the only things left to be decided really in the NFC is Bucks and Falcons. And, one of those teams is going to win the division. The other team is going to be out.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vikings, Lions, that's the difference between the 1 seed and a bye and the 5 seed in the NFC for potentially, for a 3-loss team, which is going to be tough to swallow. And right now, because the Lions haven't played yet, it would be the Vikings would be the 1 seed. But it's just it's really shaping up to be an awesome tournament. Is basically
it is.
Yeah.
I want to focus real quick on Green Bay. To your point, I mean, they have 5 losses, 2 against the Vikes, 2 against the Lions, opening day versus the Eagles. They're the best teams in the league, but I think that's where Green Bay is, where they're not quite as good as those teams. They're a really good team. They could win playoff games, and the NFC's loaded, but I don't think they can get past Detroit and Minnesota and Philly, or certainly not on the road in the NFC Championship game or something along those lines. And I'm a Jordan Love fan, but this wasn't his best day, and it seemed like they were kind of reeling him in a little bit and wanted to make it a little more run-centric, and all the man coverage and blitzing that the Vikings did on defense, I think, affected Love and the offense quite a bit, I forget what podcast I was listening to this morning, BP, but Green Bay's really good, and maybe we take the quarterback aside, but who's their star? Who's the guy on offense or defense that, man, we really need the game plan around Myles Garrett, Justin Jefferson? You know what I mean? Like, they're really good everywhere, but they don't have the corner that you just never throw at, or the edge rusher that we got to double him every time, or the interior dude. Like, who's their stud?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like it's a different guy every week,
which is cool, but I want a superstar when it needs, in the NFC Championship game.
Interesting. I wonder if they go into the offseason thinking maybe we need to consolidate this, maybe trade a young receiver to a receiver needy team, because we have a lot of number 2s to try to go get something else to add to one of those positions, to have the star player, the stud player at one of the spots, and maybe consolidate the depth into star power potentially. Might find that that's what they're looking for. It's interesting.
Like 1 D lineman that's a total Pro Bowler, I think, would go very far,
So AFC side of things, obviously the Chiefs clinched that 1 seed in the division. Buffalo Bills clinched the division. The Texans have the division all clinched up. Now it just comes down to that last wild card spot. And the Broncos, could they give it away? The Miami Dolphins and Cincinnati Bengals with wins still alive there going into week 18. So we'll have all that preview.
Chaos for sure.
Right
up your alley. Right
Love
up your alley.
Can't wait to preview what the scenarios are and what is needed in week 18. But that is the picture after 17 weeks of the NFL season, save the Monday Night Football game, which we'll break down tomorrow. Hope we do get a good primetime game here with the Lions and the San Francisco 49ers, rematch of the NFC Championship game from last year. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and Matt and I will be back breaking it all down, getting you ready for the regular season finales right here. Peacock and Williamson.